为此法会及一切诸众生，经专妙法轮教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Ruler Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma way to teach us how to live suffering and attempt bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize number.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahudi samyao samputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samyao samputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning to you. Good evening. My name is Heng. Today is Sunday, the 17th of November, here in the Gold Coast of Queensland. I'm delighted to be with you all, and we're going to be looking into the Ru Fa Jie entering the Dharma realm chapter of the Flower Garland Sutra. And I want to, first of all, appreciate all of the many hands and hearts that are going into making this lecture happen, from the translators who are translating into Chinese. And by the way, 如果呢各位想听中文，那个你们的软体那个控制板有一个叫 interpretation 那个小地球，是不是？那么就按到那里就可以找到 Chinese 就好了。And the Vietnamese translation that is also happening as well. And also all the behind the scenes, all the folks who are putting this lecture together, very much appreciated. Technologically, it's a miracle that it happens every week, and we're just delighted that you consider it important enough to give it your time and attention. So let's see here. I'm going to continue with our protocols that we go through every time at the beginning, including invoking spiritual presence here. So let's do that now. Inviting the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas of the Flower Garland Assembly and the Dharma protectors to make this afternoon lecture part of their Sunday as well. the banjo aside for now. And acknowledge country to say that we respectfully acknowledge the Kombumerri people of the Ugambi language region here in southeastern Queensland as traditional storytellers and custodians of the land where our monastery is located. We pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. 就说我们恭敬地承认与冈比语族的孔布马里人，他们是我们寺院所在地的传统叙事者和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬，并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民致敬。The bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000劫内，佛法扬万亿国中，共宣其法界和平，利益宝谈而后的。Okay, well, that's the protocol that we begin our lecture with. Because we now have switched to a public Zoom offering, folks can log in and join directly from Zoom. So now we know where people are tuning in from, which is really fun, so that we can say welcome to those of us. Our broadcast host is here in Queensland, the Gold Coast. And our SysOp, our computer expert, is that the way we say it, is in Fremont, California. That's Jerry. Our co-host is also in California. That's Chanyu. And then let's see here. We've got Binxian in Shanghai. We've got, let's see here. We have Sky in Calgary. We have friends in Liaoning. We have Heng Chan is here from HQ. Guo Hong is here from Alameda. Where else? Let's see. We have Mr. Song in Tianjin. We've got Chen Jun in Shandong. We've got, let's see here, Mr. Liang in Beijing. Mai is in the Bay Area. Ian is here. Doesn't say where. Susan. Let's see. We have our Vietnamese translation team, Willie in Virginia. Yen Do is in Vietnam. Okay, let's see. Then 我们就改到那个另外那个半球，就包括朋友在北京、在内蒙古、在上海、在哈尔滨、在北京、辽宁、安徽、合肥、深圳、吉林、悉尼。哦，好，浙江、兰海、北京。还有哪里？Let's see here. 还有福建泉州。Let's see here. 有一些小朋友，他们在河北。好的，欢迎欢迎。Let's see here. 还有淮南市，还有黑龙江，还有那个李居士在山西，在太原。那个清凉月的蔬菜馆，大家就这么说呢，不去就后悔了。还有我们的深圳、吉林、北京、唐山、北京，河南、许昌、深圳、哈尔滨，还有广西，广西省，那个是。费港是什么？ 看那个字太小，字体太小，老眼睛。深圳还有哪里？还有新疆啊，欢迎。还有 Kelly 从北京，还有珠海、鸡西黑龙江、San Jose and 北京。Good, all right。所以无论大家在哪里收听，非常非常欢迎。不知道你们各位认识 Let's see. Welcome to everyone who is here. I wonder how many people can identify my desktop. Where is that picture? What monastery is that? I wouldn't have guessed, except part of the experience of it is the clouds that you're looking at. That is, in fact, Yunju Shan Zhenru Si, cloud dwelling monastery. So there it is. You see the clouds dwelling. Okay. I wanted to take a moment before we begin and mention how this lecture is 90 minutes, and that's how long Master Hua set us up every afternoon, every evening, that is, twice on Saturday, twice on Sunday. And Shifu was traveling through a text. For example, the Avatamsaka, it took him 9 years to finish that one sutra. And with that interest in in keeping the pages turning, so he gave us 90 minutes per evening. And that was precious time. And it produced the texts with commentary that we translated and then published. And sure enough, the voice of the Buddha was heard in English in the West. Now, because of the vows of some of Shifu's disciples, though the explanations, the commentaries that Master Hua gave from Gold Mountain Monastery, from City of 10,000 Buddhas, got carried to China and also to Vietnam and back to Taiwan and Hong Kong, Singapore, where people got to hear a 20th century and 20th century monk's commentary on an a selection of ancient Chinese sutras. So they got brought back to Asia. Now, at the time, Shifu started lecturing when he arrived in California in the 60s, continued through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. 30 years spanning that time. And people's attention span was different then. We could pay attention longer than we do now. This was before the days of MTV. And we mention MTV because that particular broadcast network and then the shows, the music videos that became popular then, changed the orientation of the camera to the viewer. So the camera cuts were much shorter in duration and also in movement. When I first started watching television back in the 50s, there was a steady camera, one camera. The camera didn't move. And maybe there was a second camera, but the cuts were very slow, and people were expected to watch longer from one point of view before the point of view changed, the actual physical view of the camera. With MTV, the changes came rapidly. So you never got more than a couple seconds from one perspective before the camera moved, or the individual slid out of the frame, or they changed the camera entirely, or there was a kind of a rapid fire change of perspective. And that orientation stuck. It became the new style, and it actually changed the chemistry of our brains so that we expect things to change more quickly. I am still giving 90-minute lectures, now, as Shifu did back in the 20th century, and expecting folks to listen that long. Two opinions on that. One is, yes, it should be, we should keep it. The Sutra lecture is not for, quote, entertainment. It's not for teasing our eyes and our ears and our mind. It's there to deliver a faithful Ru Fa presence on the Dharma so that our focus is traditional, stable, unchanging, accurate, and people know what they can get when they listen to these sutras. They're listening for Dharma, they're listening for true principles, they're listening for illustrations that connect the principle to our lives. That's one point of view. There's another point of view that says if we don't speed up the delivery and give some variety, people simply will get tired of watching, or the audience will be only those elders whose brains haven't undergone that chemical reboot that expects things to change so quickly. We are now alive in the days of TikTok, Douyin, and TikTok. The average video clip on TikTok is 30 seconds, I guess. So anyway, I just wanted to bring this up to kind of tease the idea that this, on one hand, we want to move through the sutra, and we're responsible for keeping the Dharma accurate and fresh. But on the other hand, accurate and steady. But on the other hand, if we don't innovate and provide some more variety, people may simply be unable to sit through 90 minutes of one monk's droning voice and the same focus on the text. So just to introduce that idea, thinking about that. All righty. Now, here's our text. Where are we? We are at the very end of Ocean Cloud, the Bhikshu Ocean Cloud's teaching to the young man named Sudana. This is the very end of teacher number either 2 or 3, depending on whether Manjushri is number 1 or doesn't count in the series. So there we are, and we have a series of. This is the conclusion, and it's the part of every one of Sudana's teachers' habits of saying, "I'm done with my teaching, and I've given you what I know." But what I know compared to all the others is minuscule. They're the ones who really can answer your question. So learn what I've taught you, but wash clean, refresh your ears, and prepare space in your mental hard drive for new instructions down the road from a real expert. They always humble themselves and promote the teacher who is waiting down south. And we're right at that point in our text today. Okay, everybody prepared to jump in here? Let's make this bigger. There we go. Here we are. First lines right there. Since I'm lecturing without the benefit of an audience, if you all would like to read along with me, please go ahead. If I were with a live audience today, we have a Amitabha retreat going on this week here at Gold Coast. As a result, my lecture is coming to you from the broadcast towers of 102 Benogan Road. Paramita House. Here we go. 善男子，我为之此普贤法门，汝诸菩萨摩诃萨深入一切菩萨横海，随其愿力而修行故。Okay, and it goes all the way down to the bottom where he finishes his sentence by saying, 而我云何能知能说彼功德恒. Okay, so that is it's one long sentence with 10 components to it. He says, good man, I only know this universal I Dharma method. but as to how all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, deeply enter the ocean of bodhisattva practices in order to follow their vow power and cultivation, 9 varieties of that statement. How could I possibly know or speak of such practices of merit and virtue? Okay? So, to review, the monk who's speaking is a monk called Haiyun Bicho, Ocean Cloud. And he is explaining his method that he got from the Buddha. And his method had everything to do with the ocean. And we heard, here was where we got contemplations of the ocean, 10 different things that come to mind, its depth, the treasures it holds, how it never overflows its banks, no matter how much rain falls, etc. The great beings, great animals with big bodies that live in the ocean. So that's where he's coming from. So in his kind of tying up the teachings to Sudana, and in his removing himself from positions of authority, just in that is a lesson, certainly, this lesson of humility. In doing so, his conclusion, there are 10 images from the ocean again. And ocean meaning depth, big, quantity, okay? He says, good man, and it's not a gendered good man, it could be good woman, son, some people translate this son of good family, others translate it as disciple. So is it important that Sudana is a youth? No, it's not. He is the being who is on his way to Buddhahood at the end of this long 53 teacher tutorial. He says, I only know my method, known as the Pu Yan Famen, the universal vision, the boundaryless ability to see, this method. Then we get this sentence split up. How all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, the great teachers among bodhisattvas, here's the verb, shun ru, enter deep, go deep into the ocean of bodhisattvas practices. Sui qi yuan li, and follow their vows and cultivate, comma, okay? You understand how this is structured. So this is the way, whenever we get tens of things, which is all the time in the Avatamsaka, whenever there's a 10, it's the first one of the series is the theme and everything else follows. They're variations of the theme. So it's deeply enter Iche Pusa Heng Hai, the ocean of bodhisattvas practices, and follow their vows to cultivate. All right, point out, those of you who are studying this, who want to know what the Avatamsaka is about, here it is. The Avatamsaka is about bodhisattvas and their practices and their vows. So if somebody came to you and said, how does the Avatamsaka Sutra describe bodhisattvas? If you said it has to do with their practices and their vows, you would be right. So what are practices and vows? What makes this different from, let's say, the Arhat, who is also someone who uses the Dharma to wake up, but does it differently? Well, it's practices and vows. So the Avatamsaka, well, let me give you my story that some of you heard me say this before. But when I go, when I'm out and available to answer questions from people, I get one question over and over again in particular. And that question is, Dharma Master, we hear about 84,000 practices. Which one's the best one for me? That's the question I get the most. And Actually, as I've said before, I've actually asked that question myself to Master Shenhua, because that's a lot. We hear about 84,000 practices. It sounds ridiculous. Why would there be so many? And among them, are there some that are the best? Master Hua would always say, his stock answer to that was, whichever one you like, or combination of practices you like, none of them fail to be number one practice. They're all excellent practices, but they may not suit your particular preference or liking. So pick ones you like and put them to work. Okay, now, can I show you this character right here? Heng Hai, ocean of practices. That's the ocean, meaning this huge collection of practices. What is it about this word right here? You see, it is Heng. It's also called Xing. It's also Hang sometimes. Here's the Goyan Zimu. It's a fourth tone, Heng. And if you look at this as an object, look at this character as an object, it's footprints, left foot, right foot, as it came down to us from the past as a graph. So it's somebody walking. And Heng, as a noun, as a thing, as a practice, can include things like meditation. Meditation is a pusa heng, a bodhisattva practice. Being generous and finding opportunities to give to people is a bodhisattva practice. Reciting a sacred name. Every time your mind moves, bringing it back to Namo Guanshi Yin Pusa. That's a bodhisattva practice. Taking a set of beads, let's take a set of beads like these, for example, and going Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo Amitofo, Namo, like that, counting the name of the Buddha Amitabha on every bead. That is a bodhisattva practice. And notice it's a left step and a right step and a left step and a right step. That's a Heng. What's the connection? What's the big deal between the character Heng, which can also mean, as a verb, to travel? It's that these bodhisattva practices require movement. They require you to actually go and do them. And when you do, if you, quote, practice, if you repeat a certain behavior over and over, our bodies are electrical units that build up habits. What Malcolm Gladwell says, that you have to do something 10,000 times before it becomes yours. Is that the number, was it? And once you do it 10,000 times, you go on automatic pilot. You can do it without conscious effort, and you get good at it. He gave that particular teaching regarding things like skills, like, for example, building a violin, playing the piano, things like painting that require subtle, repetitive muscle motions, but then after that number of repetitions produces mastery. That was his idea. So a Heng is that way. You xing Heng, you travel, you walk a practice, meaning you repeat it until there is a change in our physical, spiritual, biological makeup, intellectual makeup. That's a bodhisattva practice. And because, now there's more to know about these practices, which is they don't arise aimlessly. And not everything that people do is a bodhisattva practice. For example, bullying your brother, the big brother bullying a little brother, or the little sister nagging her big brother. Both of those are not Bodhisattva's practices. It's behavior, but it's not behavior that leads back to the mind. Bodhisattva practices have the quality, the thing that makes them Bodhisattva practices is that as you repeat this behavior, what happens is the illusion of the self gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and the connection to all existence grows stronger and stronger and stronger. The one end of that travel is someone who is completely covered over by the view of self. That would be a malignant narcissist, someone who only sees their self in every interaction with the world, their own benefit, their own advantage. They have no sense of anything existing outside of their own identity. That's one end of, and the unwholesome end of being alive in a human body. The other positive side would be someone who understands great compassion. They say tongti dabe, identity in body with all beings, embodying identity with all beings. No ego covering that demands satisfaction of the view of self. So those, and we, living beings, possibly those of us who've already admire the Bodhisattva and want to walk that way, we're somewhere in between. That absolutely covered over and afflicted by self, and someone who has transformed that false view and returned to identity with all beings. That's the Bodhisattva's wisdom and compassion at work. So, Bodhisattva practices are designed with that in mind. That's what makes the difference. And there's the fact that there's 84,000, why not 83,999? Why not 84,001? That number is not specifically accurate to be 84,000. It's Bawan Siqian means numerous practices that come down from a non-specific past to the present. I mentioned before our Dr. Konza, the translator of Sanskrit Prajnaparamita literature, his theory, what he liked to say, that Buddha Dharma was simply the collecting over lifetimes and eons of these various practices. And that's why we have so many lists of dharmas that pop up in when we start to cultivate. Okay, take a break. I started thinking that meditation was it. You meditate and you get enlightened. That was all I knew. That was what, it's not fair to say that's what the beatniks transmitted, but pretty close. So it was the writings of largely Gary Snyder and Allen Ginsberg, Philip Whalen, and the early beatniks who had a strong interest in Japanese Zen. Gary Snyder, in particular, traveled to Japan and saw that there's much, much more than simply Kensho, Zazen. But the Japanese are certainly responsible for that view, in particularly the Soto school, where they say, Shikan taza, zhiguan dazuo, only pay attention to your sitting. That's all you have to do. When I traveled to Kyoto in 1969 and met at Antaiji Soto Monastery, the Roshi whose name was Uchiyama Kosho. Uchiyama Roshi was not possessed of that view that there's only Zazen. He was a direct inheritor of that lineage through Sawaki Kodo Roshi, on down through the Eheiji lineage from Dogen. But Uchiyama Roshi had all kinds of expedient ways of teaching. For example, he was a great origami master, learned from his father paper folding. He was just a master. And he also, he explained sutras. He gave Dharma talks. He ran the monastery and taught young men how to move, how to improve their lives through the Dharma. So not mono-dimensional. When Gary Snyder and the others brought it back to the West, and we first, for example, I, as one of the young men growing up in the 60s who found the books called The Dharma Bums and On the Road, Jack Kerouac and others writing, I first met the word Dharma in the title of that book, and it was there on my father's night reading stand by his bed. My dad was a reader, and there would be a steady stream of new books on the bedside stand. And of course, as soon as he got in the car and drove off to work, I would grab whatever he was reading because I wanted to know what my dad was thinking. So I first encountered the Dharma Bums, Jack Kerouac, because that paperback popped up on my dad's bedside reading table. So, okay, now, many of us, and I'm going to extrapolate, say there's a large number of people who are repeating that process through mindfulness, which is a new and wholesome trend coming to the civilized world as an antidote to stress, as a solution for people who are seeking peace of mind, who feel that their lives are unmanageable without some new spiritual technology. And we're learning mindfulness, which is by and large introduced through the Theravada tradition of S.N. Goenka or the disciples from Venerable Ajahn Chah, from Joseph Goldstein and the Spirit Rock in Northern California, or Insight Meditation, Jack Kornfield and others, Sharon Salzberg and others, who are teaching mindfulness. And again, many, many folks will learn to watch their breath, watch their thoughts. And of 100 people who learn mindfulness as a way to calm down, as a way to find peace of mind, there will be a handful who will say, is there more? This is really good. And I would like to extend my access to Bodhisattva's practices. So that's how we start. When we get to the Avatamsaka Sutra, this is the whole banquet. This is where we find 84,000 methods. Okay, that's the practices part of the Bodhisattva path. What's the other one? Vows. Their vows, let's see, he says, good men, how all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, deeply enter the profound ocean of Bodhisattva practices in order to follow their vow power in cultivation. What's that? So vow power is a key word. I said Bodhisattva path, 2 words, practices, vows and practices. The vow part is what powers the Bodhisattva from disappointment to disappointment, to defeat, to mission accomplished and success, as he or she follows the Buddha with the intent of what? With the intent of taking living beings across. There's our verb, du zhongsheng. So vows, what makes a bodhisattva different from an ordinary person is this intention to, what do they say? 众生无边誓愿度. Even though living beings are infinite in number, I'm still going to take them all across. That's what a bodhisattva does. And that's a heroic intention. You have to be a hero to do that, because why? We, living beings, are very difficult to take across. We don't listen. We mistake what is actually misery for something pleasant, like gambling, for example, like alcohol, for example. Number two, they say, 烦恼无尽，誓愿断. Even though the things that prevent living beings from waking up are limitless in number, I'm still going to find a way to dispel those afflictions, those obstacles, to cut through the confusion. Okay, so that's the second vow, the Bodhisattva's vow power. The third of the Bodhisattva's vow power is 法门无量，誓愿学. Even though there are an infinite number, let's say 84,000 methods of practice, still I'm going to learn them all, because what works for this person may not work for the other person. So I need to learn enough of them that I can help out, help people, make suggestions, or simply model it by doing it myself, so that others go, hey, that looks interesting, I want to try that too. So that's the third of the Bodhisattva's vows. And then the last one goes, 佛道无上，誓愿成. Even though Buddhahood is the highest accomplishment of a lifetime, I'm absolutely going to get there. All right? Those are 4 of Bodhisattva's vows. What are some others? Oh my goodness. Once you start investigating in the Mahayana tradition, in our Chinese tradition, the topic of vows, Wao Yi, there's a lot. Amitabha Buddha, 48 vows. Medicine Buddha, 12 great vows. Who else? Well, Samantabhadra's 10 practices and vows. Who else? Well, it's interesting because Earth Treasury Bodhisattva is said to be the Bodhisattva with the greatest vows. How many? 2. Numerically, not as many as 48, but the size of the vows are vast. How does Earth Treasury, Dizampusa, enter the ocean of great vows to deeply enter the ocean of Bodhisattva's practices to follow his vows? So the people are familiar with that one? That's I think, really interesting. So Earth-Tor Bodhisattva says, 地狱为空，誓不成佛，众生度尽，方证菩提. He says, 地狱为, he's only after the hells are empty will I, 誓不成佛, become a Buddha. Now, just on the face of it, you say, when are the hells empty? Not immediately. In that, people are still creating the karma that leads to the hells. The hells have a front door and a back door. And if we exit the hells out the back door, there are beings coming into the front door. So that particular focus is on the hells, and that the hells are always seen as down at the bottom of the 6 paths of rebirth. So that's Earth-Tor Bodhisattva's vows. Essentially, he's condemning himself. He's not. He's lining up. He's committing. That's the word we want. He's committing himself to staying in the hells, because they're not going to be empty tomorrow or the next day or the next life or ever. But the second vow says, 众生度尽，方证菩提. So if we say, let's take the human realm as the standard he's making his vows from, he's saying he's going to bring everybody out of the hells up to the human realm, and then he can be a Buddha. Except the second vow says, 众生度尽, I've got to take living beings not only out of the human realm, but all the way to Buddhahood before he realizes Bodhi. So it's a 2-step process in Earth-Tor Bodhisattva's vows. Got to empty the hells and then take us the next way. Once we get to humanity, he still has to find a way to get us to cultivate to Buddhahood. So that's why those 2 vows are the biggest. So you see, this is how bodhisattvas are different than ordinary people. I like this particular emphasis in the Tibetan tradition. that I hadn't heard specifically from the Chinese Mahayana, but it makes sense to me when I change the language, which is what? In the Tibetan tradition, if you listen to, for example, the teachings of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, FPMT, he says, foundation for the propagation, not the prevention, foundation for the propagation of the Mahayana tradition, FPMT. He says, important to fix your intention, to set your intention. This emphasis on making a vow, that our language is make a vow first. Know what you want to accomplish, even if it's as lofty and somehow seemingly unattainable as a Mahayana Bodhisattva. I'm going to take every living being across. Whoa, you bit off a lot. Can you chew it all? So don't bite off more than you can chew. The Tibetan tradition says, make an intention, set your intention, and then meditate. Do it every time before you pick up your beads. I'm going to recite 108 Great Compassion mantras, you might say, or I'm going to recite the Buddha's name, Namo Amitabha, 10,000 times. Set that intention so that you have a practice completed, which what? You can then transfer the merit for it. Oh, instead of randomly, Amitofo, just reciting it without a beginning, a middle, and an end. I really like that approach. I think that's very helpful, and it gives you clarity and allows you to transfer merit when you're done. So anyway, these are the vows of bodhisattvas, and it says, how do bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, deeply enter the ocean of bodhisattva practices, meaning so many practices like an ocean, in order to Soichi Yanli, realize their vows as they cultivate. Okay? Got that? All right. Thank you, Dharma Master. Ooh. Take a look here. I want to, let's see here. Where was zoom in? Always show the sidebar full screen. No, enter full screen. There we go. Yeah. Take a look here. Fo Guang Si. How about that? You see Fo Guang coming up? Look at I want to show people this bare wood and the paint and the decoration and the way the eaves come out and the way the wood is built. This is a Tang Dynasty monastery called Fo Guang Si on Wutaishan, and we were just there 3 weeks ago. Here is our group. We just jumped off the bus. And interestingly enough, as we jumped off the bus, there were 2 pilgrims, Chinese lay ladies, down here in front, who said, oh, are you from Wanfo-cheng? We are from Taiwan. We know all about you. Oh, so coincidence, run into some friends just like that. Da Fo Guang Si. This is a historic monastery, and the government is kind of letting it just be the way it is. They haven't developed this and put it on the tourist map. But this particular monastery is, let's see, here we go, this way, here we go, is holding a pure form of Tang Dynasty sculpture and architecture and wall paintings and space for Dharma practice. You're looking at Wenshu Pusa, Manjushri Bodhisattva, with his lion. But look at the faces of the bodhisattvas surrounding Manjushri. Look at the image of the lion tamer. This is the keeper of the lion. And this is how the Tang Dynasty saw. We're looking back 13 centuries to living history and just so powerful. These are bi hua, wall paintings. You can see how this is just plaster and the paint is disappearing from these Tang Dynasty wall paintings, murals. Look at the expressions on and the variety of. They always talked about the Tang Dynasty as the most cosmopolitan and the most international. China was truly a crossroads for the world, and all these different beings came through, and they were so common in the understanding of the world of the Dharma that artists captured in remarkable remarkable accuracy. Is this what people look like in the Tang Dynasty as the Buddhist artists visualized what the Bodhisattvas and sages must look like based on the people that they saw? Maybe so. But as a know-nothing art historian, as I am, look at how these paintings are disappearing. Did they make a decision to let folks in until the paintings disappeared? I don't know. But Fo Guangsi was allowed to be very natural. Here is the Buddha, and again, look at the images. The Tang Dynasty had a sense of beauty and aesthetics that is different from the present, certainly. Different from the Ming, different from the Qing. These very healthy looking individuals, these bodhisattvas around the Buddha and the Buddha himself, they look worldly but world transcending. They look like they're well fed, but they're also serene from another world. Just, I don't know, I never get tired of looking at these images. There were arhats on both sides of the Buddha hall at Fo Guangsi. Look at the arhats. Different colors, different races, but each one of these beings, you can see their character. You feel like you could probably walk up and talk to any one of them if you knew the language and you dared. Amazing. Just amazing. I want to point to the roof and the eaves. This is built without nails, only through wood joinery. In all of China, this is said to be the most authentic, intact version of Tang Dynasty architecture available. Outside was called the Zushi Ta, the patriarchs or the ancestors' pagoda. Here it is. You can see the plaster that was painted is falling off the bricks here. And the decision, I would like to, if anybody knows, maybe somebody on the call today knows the story of Fo Guangsi at Wutaishan. Why is it in this state of repair without being preserved? I'm not being critical. I'm sure it was a decision. This is a world heritage, a precious treasure. And other monasteries, for example, Da Xian Tong Si at Wutaishan is protected and modernized and prepared for tourists to come. Fo Guangsi, not so. I want to show you, look at some of the eaves. Look at these are considered the most spectacular example still existent of how temples were built back in the Tang. Again, this is the outside of the Buddha hall. And to get up here, we had to climb steps that were scary. That's a staircase. It's coming down was even scarier. Someone mentioned maybe this is designed so no horses of any invading armies could climb into Foguangsi, maybe, Buddha Light Monastery. So there you go. How about that? Yeah, very cool. Maybe somebody knows. I'm sure online somewhere there's the story of the approach to Foguangsi. Alrighty, let's take another look here. Right here. We're going to go all the way through, down to the bottom. Okay, we ready? Here we go. 入大愿海，于无量劫住世间故。入一切众生海，随其心要，广利益故。入一切众生心海，出生实力无碍之光明故。之光故。入一切众生根海，应使教化，悉令调伏故。入一切刹海，成满本愿，眼净佛刹故。入一切佛海，愿常供养诸如来故。入一切法海，能以智慧显悟入故。入一切功德海，一一修行令具足故。入一切众生言辞海，于一切刹转正法轮故。而我云何能知能说彼功德恒？ Okay. Okay, he says, let's use that first sentence again to make sense. Good man, I only know this universal I, Dharma method, but as to how all bodhisattvas, mahasattvas deeply enter the ocean of bodhisattva practices in order to follow their vow power and cultivation, okay, here's where we pick up. How they enter the ocean of great vows in order to dwell for limitless eons in the world. How they enter the ocean of beings in accord with their mind's delights, so as to vastly benefit them. How they enter the ocean of beings' hearts, I would translate minds, in order to bring forth the unobstructed wisdom light of the 10 powers. How they enter the ocean of beings' faculties in order to teach and transform them at the opportune time, to tame and subdue them. How they enter the ocean of kshetras in order to fulfill their fundamental vows to adorn and purify Buddha kshetras. How they enter the ocean of Buddhas because they vowed to make offerings forever to thus come ones. How they enter the ocean of dharmas because they can enlighten to them through wisdom, or because they can, yeah, I think that's right, to them. How they enter the ocean of meritorious virtues in order to cultivate each one of them to perfection. How they enter the sea of beings, languages, and words in order within all kshetras to turn the proper Dharma wheel. How could I possibly know or speak of such practices of merit and virtue? Okay. In order to understand that a little more clearly, I put it into this. So let's go up to 50. There we go. Okay, it's the first statement was I entered oceans, bodhisattvas enter oceans of things that rue. Now, the word ocean is a metaphor. It's a picture. Meaning what? Meaning a lot. Is it really an ocean? An ocean of practices? Practices aren't made of water. So you know it's metaphor. Just means the biggest thing on the planet is an ocean. I grew up in Ohio, we have Lake Erie, where Toledo is on the shores of Lake Erie, which is one of the 5 Great Lakes. But Lake Erie is still a lake compared to the Pacific Ocean. And in 1969, at age 19, when I finally got to San Francisco on my way to Taiwan, I saw the Pacific Ocean. And I knew that that was the biggest thing. Actually, the biggest, closest thing would be the moon. But the Pacific Ocean, you can go down and stick your toe in it. You can splash it on your face. You can taste the salt. You can stand on the Great Highway and look across the beach to the pounding surf. And just, there's nothing like the Pacific Ocean unless you're on the East Coast and it's the Atlantic Ocean. Or you go down to Broad Beach or to Surfer's Paradise right here in the Gold Coast to see the South China Sea, to see the let's see. I'm gonna embarrass myself, my ignorance of what body of water crashes into the wonderful beaches of the Gold Coast. Okay, so those are oceans, and they're huge, the biggest thing. That's why the Buddha uses them to say practices. Now, the important word that I want people to engage with is this one right here. Ru. 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 Ru your boat. No, it's not row, it's ru. So ru can certainly mean to enter, like ruman. You go into the door, but more importantly, a ruman is a door entering text, meaning a primer, something that helps you start and engage with something. So the word can mean enter, but it also means to lose your boundaries. You rule something when you merge with it. You become one with it. In the case of an ocean, you immerse yourself, you jump in, you dive in, and you and the ocean are one. You lose your boundaries when you integrate with. Okay? So if you think of a doorway, you're in this room. To get to the other room, you have to step out or get pushed in a wheelchair or get carried through the door, through the gateway, the limen, you cross over the entranceway into the other space. You're no longer in that room, you're now in this room. That's ru. That's a physical entering. But when it's not a space we're talking about, when it's an ocean of Bodhisattva's practices that you ru every time, or what else is it? It's great vows. It is beings, an ocean of beings, minds. I prefer minds in that case. An ocean of beings, faculties. Do you enter them? You don't enter them. Bodhisattva integrates with them. Kshetras are lands. Cha. It's a Buddhist technical term meaning a land. Then you enter the Buddhas? No. An ocean of Buddhas? No. You immerse yourself. You integrate with. You become one with dharmas, with gongda, meritorious virtue, and interestingly enough, languages and words. So by describing it this way, what I want folks to do is not get stuck, as I was for a long time, thinking that you had to rule somebody's mind. You had to enter somebody's faculties. You had to enter somebody's Buddha's ocean. That made no sense to me, and I just basically shut it out. It's like, somebody else understands that better than I do, so I'll just take a rain check, right? That's not the way to do it. So don't be stuck by one definition of the word ru, when making it a different verb, to immerse yourself in, to merge with. Think of boundaries. Well, my skin is a boundary. If I can go beyond that boundary, then I can completely integrate myself with the thoughts in somebody's mind, and I've got a way to influence them. Okay, so that's the verb part. Now, the interesting thing about these, what Master Hai Yun is telling Sudana, is there's a second part of each of these vows. Look at this. He says, all I know, he says, I only know what the Buddha taught me, but how bodhisattvas can do these 10 things, I don't know about that. But if you go and ask them, you can learn. He says, what is it? The second half, how they merge with practices so they can make their vows come real, how they can merge with an ocean of vows so that they can stay in the world for limitless eons. Bodhisattvas do that. They don't want to leave right away. They don't want to get to nirvana. That's a unique aspect of bodhisattvas. So they make vows to say, I will come back because I haven't finished helping. Living beings are suffering a lot. I'm going to stick around to teach them. Okay, what else? They rule an ocean of beings. Do they enter beings? No. They merge with them. They identify with them entirely. What? In accord with what they like, so I can help them. According with mind's delights. Key bodhisattva strategy, which is how do they say? Catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. You know that one? That English Chengyu. You want to catch flies? I'm sure you do, don't you? Everybody wants to catch flies. There's a large house spider in my window who the last couple of days, because we're in summer now and there's a lot of bugs flying around, this spider has got a pretty good average. Every time I look up, he's got another bug. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. If you want to enter the ocean of beings, merge with, integrate with, identify with an ocean of beings, make them happy. Don't make them sad. That's the vinegar part. Use honey, they'll come around. We like sweet stuff. If you use vinegar, sour stuff, they won't come, and you won't be able to benefit them. How do bodhisattvas do that? Ocean Cloud says, go south and you'll find somebody who will teach you. How they merge with beings' minds so that they can, what? The second half of this one is, bring forth unobstructed wisdom light of the 10 powers. Now that is Buddhist code language, is it not? Somebody hears that, they're going to go, wait, I came to meditate. What are you giving me unobstructed wisdom light and 10 powers? Welcome to the Bodhisattva path. Man, this is real Dharma teaching here. What are the 10 powers? The 10 powers are the primo tools that bodhisattvas use when they want to teach. It includes such things as the ability to know past lives of bodhisattvas, the ability to know the thoughts, mind reading. You can know exactly what is on the mind of living beings. You can know their potential for learning. You can know their obstacles, how they don't bend. And then with the knowledge you get from these tools, you can then design something to help them progress and evolve and let go of their obstructions and pick up their kindness. Okay? So there it is. That's the 10 powers. The Tathagatas, Rulai Shili, and then Pusa Shili. There's Tathagatas 10 and the Bodhisattvas 10. And the wisdom light shines through the dark. you can see it. Okay? Good. You want to enter the ocean of being's faculties so that you can, this is teach and transform, tame and subdue. These are not lions in the circus. And taming and subduing is careless translation. That was an early one, 降服, right? So we can improve. We say to get them to accord, to adjust them, to find the middle. It's not a taming like wild animals, okay? How do you merge with an ocean of kshetras, the lands, so that their vows come true and they create places where living beings want to live? To adorn and purify, again, careless language, you don't adorn a kshetra. You create a land. That zhuangyan, qingjing, has to do with creation, not with decorating. Okay, ocean of Buddhas, because they vowed to make offerings to thus commons. That's where blessings come from. That's where you get the money in the bank that allows you to cultivate through difficulty and not collapse, not fall short. What else? An ocean, merge with, identify with an ocean of dharmas, because wisdom lets you see what's going on. You know what's happening because you can use wisdom to identify dharma. You don't quit when things get difficult because you can see how there are some basic patterns that repeat over and over and over. So you wake up to using wisdom. Meritorious virtues, you merge with an ocean of gongde because they're all cultivated to perfection. So you become a lot of merit and virtue in the traditional way of describing it through China is the 四维八德, the foundations of civilization and culture. A lot of these have to do with your relationships, how you react with other people. How are you in a social setting? And people who educate young minds are concerned because technology takes us away from relationships. We don't have to interact with other beings because we don't encounter them. We get, how do you be filial to a chatbot on your phone, to a virtual intelligence, a digital intelligence on your phone? How are you filial to it? How do you be faithful to it? It's basically just numbers. So that's a problem. And if people are no longer concerned about working out relationships, then the foundation of a culture and civilization, what you should and shouldn't do because it's right, just vanishes. We don't know what's the right thing to do anymore because the being with whom we spend all our time only exists in my phone, and I pay a company to subscribe to its existence. That's a challenge if we want to cultivate meritorious virtues to perfection. Finally, the last one, I like this one, languages and words. You merge into an ocean of languages and words because wherever you are, you're able to turn the right Dharma wheel. Meaning, again, Buddhist code language, you're able to teach. You're able to reflect on principles so that people, when they watch you, when they think about what they saw you do, they go, oh, he did that because there's a principle there. I understand. I want to do that myself. He says, how could I possibly know or speak such practice of merit and virtue? Says, okay, ready? 善男子从此难行，六世由熏，冷且道边， 又一居落名为海岸，彼有比丘名曰善入，如一彼问菩萨云何？敬菩萨恒。Good man, travel to the south for 60 yojanas. Along the road to Lanka, there's a village called Seashore. There you'll find a bhikshu called Wholesome Abode. Go there, ask him how you purify Bodhisattva practices. 时上塞童子离海云祖，又绕瞻仰，辞退而去。At that time, the youth Sudana bowed at the feet of Ocean Cloud, circled around him to the right, gazed up at him in admiration, bade farewell, and took his leave. Yeah, oh boy, here we are. This is the goodbye to teacher number 3. He says, go 60 yoshin, 60 yojanas. People disagree on how far a yojana is, but the goal is clear. So on the road to Lanka, you'll find a place called Seashore, another ocean side location, and there's a third monk, wholesome abode, shanzhu, good dwelling, good living, good place, nice lodging, right? Nice house, shanzhu. Go there and ask him your question about how do you purify a bodhisattva practice? What that means is you cultivate it without any stain of self. You're not selfish. You're not doing it for the wrong intention. You're not doing it for personal benefit. You're better at it. That's the purification there, means how you improve your cultivation of that practice. So look what Sudana does. Sudana bows goodbye, walks around to the right with his shoulder bare, looks up at him, says, ooh, such a good teacher. Thank you for the universal eye, universal vision Dharma method, says goodbye, and sets out again. Packs his bag. Sudana has really good luggage. He's a traveler. He knows, he's got it down to a system. So just enough. He takes enough that he can carry and it meets his needs. And now the challenge for a student is to absorb what he's just been given and to make room for what's ahead. So last week we looked at all the steps involved in this encounter. Number 2, number 3, depending on how we count it, right? So here he is, Ocean Cloud, Kingdom of Ocean Gate. And this is actually the right time. I jumped the gun last week by reading the verse too soon. Ocean Cloud, here it is. He says, 一入多门，又道门，分明普眼照乾坤。10年观海深深去，潜在温经频频存。白狼咏花成一瑞，红莲现佛独上尊。须弥具笔，修习虚云写，万象强波欲断魂。He says, they're just excellent stuff. He says, upon entering the multiple doors, there was door after door. The bright, clear, universal eye illumined Chen and Kun, the universe. For 10 years, I watched the ocean with ever-deepening absorption. For 1,000 years, I heard the Sutra. Every chapter was intact, not lost, not distorted, right? A blossom burst forth from white waves, a rare, auspicious portent. A Buddha appeared on a red lotus. He alone was honored. 唯我独尊. Even with Mount Sumeru as a pen, I couldn't write it all down. Entranced by a myriad Elysian waves, I was like one transfixed. So this is, these verses are from a monk named Foguo, who took it upon himself, inspired by the encounters, the relationships of teacher to student in the Gandavyuha, entering the Dharma realm chapter, that he memorialized it in a verse, and then artists came along after that to illustrate it. But they're just so evocative, and it makes the challenge of the pilgrim somehow, to me, just really come alive. And traveling in search of wisdom, even though your body moves through space and your feet cover the miles, the real journey is inside. You're looking for truth and insight, answers to questions. Just wonderful. So let's take a look here. We'll start here. 五台山 云举山 天台山, the three destinations of our China trip this time, and how wonderful it was. We start right here. Master Yunguan at Suidai Gucha, Guoqing Si, Tiantaishan. Here's our delegation. The abbot himself came out to greet us, which everybody remarked and how amazing that was. Master Yunguan could not be more busy. He professionally greets people, dignitaries, Buddhist and Taoist, and political and just social. But he is truly a friend of City of 10,000 Buddhas and Master Hua's Dharma. And I have been to, I was at Guoqing Si when his Shifu was still alive, Master Kuming Changlao. But this was when our delegation was 40, and people were thrilled that the abbot of this historic Sui dynasty, 5th century monastery, Yunguan Pasha, would come out to greet us. So took us around, and we were able to offer incense. Everyone did. Everyone has a connection now in our delegation by offering incense to this beautiful monastery. Some people will tell you, this is Master Kuming's guest room, where I first met the elder abbot who's now gone. Master Yunguan is his Dharma heir. People will tell you that the Chinese Mahayana came into being essentially with the Tiantai Jiaoguan. This is Master Zhizhe, the wise one, Zhi Chanshi, that he, from his time on, Mahayana Buddhism looked to China for its wisdom, not only back at India for its wisdom. So that's the biggest difference between before Master Jirja and after. Here he is holding a scroll by our teacher, by Master Shenhua, the Shurangama mantra heart, Dorje Tuanan. There it is. Okay, so I can only give you just a little taste of these wonderful images. We're out of time now. So I want to say again how much I appreciate the support for this lecture series by all the volunteers who give up their Sundays and their Saturdays to make these lectures go further in Vietnamese and Chinese and on in English. And we can broadcast to YouTube and to Zoom without trouble, and archive these teachings so that people can watch them later as we pursue the pilgrimage of Sudana in one lifetime, becoming a Buddha. So please make a wish if you care to, however you would like to dedicate merit. I think of a lot of places that could use a boost right now. So let's do that, and then we'll use this melody to send it off. If people hear and see our hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward, may all sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, we'll set the guitar aside and invite everyone to join me in making 3 bows to the Buddhas. Just a moment here, let's bring this one up. There we go. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. That's going to do it for us for today. We'll see you all next time. Amitofo. Bye now.